Hello and welcome to my studio. In this video I'm going to show you how I made this picture. This picture was produced with just a small flash and a small shoot-through umbrella. The results are down to the techniques applied to the equipment. If you're on a budget, the shoot-through umbrella has to be one of the most versatile lighting modifiers available. And in this video I'm going to show you exactly how I did it. Okay, so I mentioned the white shoot-through umbrella. So this is one of those, and these are very economical to buy and very useful. You can use them in all sorts of different ways. So just like this, the way I'm going to use it today is just with a small flash head or flash gun, and basically I'm just going to place that on the end of this head and above the subject, which will be down here on the table. Okay, so next thing to do would be to sort out the subject. So I had the subject on a white base, and for that what I'm going to do is just put this piece of white card on the table here, something like that, and then on top of this I'm going to place a piece of white perspex. There we are. Now I'm using this perspex on top of this piece of white card because the perspex is slightly transparent. So if I didn't have a white base underneath it, then whatever colour, in this case the dark blue, would show through, so it wouldn't be completely white. This way I can guarantee I end up with a white result. Okay, so the next thing would be to place the items. Now I'm using a couple of peppers. Here we are. So I'm just going to place those on here. Something like that. We'll probably need to arrange them a little later. Okay, so for the subject, that's it. So the next thing to do would be just to roughly set the light. So what I'm going to do, I've placed this flash head with the small umbrella just in this stand, and we'll just swing this round and just push the boom out a little, something like that. There we are, and I'll just initially just put that up in the air a bit, up here somewhere. Something like that. Okay. Now this will probably need to be adjusted, but you get the idea. It's going to be over the top of the subject. So the next thing to do will be set up the camera position. So I've got a tripod here, and what I'm going to do is just place it at the front, something like that. Now this has a geared center column, so it's easy to adjust the height of the camera. And it also has a geared head, so we can get very precise control over just where you're pointing the camera. So for the camera, I'm using this medium format camera with a 120mm lens on it. So if you're using a full frame camera, the equivalent of that would be about 75mm. So it just gives you that extra little piece of space between the front element of the lens and the subject. Okay, so I'll just pop that on the top of the tripod. There we go. So the next thing to do would be to tether the camera into Capture One. That way it will be easy to show the results as I go along. So there we are, that's all on now, and you can see on the screen here all the settings that I have on the camera at the moment. So it's in full manual mode. I have a shutter speed of 1/125th of a second, an ISO of 100, and at the moment I've got an aperture set of f8. So just with those settings and not having the flash turned on yet, what I'm going to do is just capture an image just to make sure I don't get any contamination from the house lights. And there we go. We can see that we've got a fuzzy sort of image here, but there's very little contamination to worry about there, I don't think. Okay. So with that experiment out of the way, The chances of me actually using f8 are fairly slim. I'm probably going to be using a much smaller aperture to give me a bigger depth of field, which will also cut out more of the light. Okay, so next thing to do would be to set up the shot. So what I'm going to do, just look through the viewfinder and we'll just set a focus point. I'll just put the lens in autofocus for the time being. And we'll just use the focusing on the camera to get me in the right ballpark. There we go. Now I've picked the particular angle that I've got this camera at on purpose so that I can fill the frame with the perspex from about here somewhere right to the very back down here. And that will become important as the shoot progresses. I'll show you why a little later. Okay, so with all that set, next thing to do would be to turn the flash on, and we'll grab an initial exposure. And for that, I'm just going to use TTL metering in the camera. Okay, off we go then. Now you might have noticed that the flash fired twice. That's because the first time was to set the exposure and the second time was to actually capture the image. And this is what we've ended up with. So as far as the exposure is concerned, it's okay, it'll do for the time being. I can have a look around and just check the focus point. If I just zoom in slightly, there we go. We can see the focus point is back here somewhere, and it really should be in the front third of the image. So it's not quite in the right place yet. So the easiest way to set the focus point will be to use live view. So what I'm going to do is just start up live view through the software. Just make that a little bigger. Just zoom in slightly. And I want the focus point around here somewhere. So I can use these controls here just to alter where the lens is actually focusing. So I'll just zoom in a little more. And we'll just change the particular bit I'm looking at. There we are, we can see it coming into focus now. And I want to go ever so slightly back from there. So about there somewhere should do me, I think. So I can get rid of live view, and I can also just take the camera out of TTL so I have full control over the flash. So I'll do that, and we'll just grab an image. Yes, I think that's slightly better. If I zoom all the way in now, yes, the focus point is about here somewhere. Let's just have a look at the other one. Yeah, you can see all the various bits on the surface, which is what we want. But the depth of field is leaving quite a lot to be desired. So what I want to do is increase the depth of field, and the easiest way to do that would be just to change the aperture. So what I'm going to do is change that from f8. I'm going to go all the way up to f22. Okay, so that's a 3-stop change, so I need to add 3 stops of energy to the flash just to make up for that change. So what I'm going to do is just use the remote on the camera here just to add 3 stops. So I'll just bring up the flash control. That's the flash selected, and I'll add 1, 2, 3 stops of energy to that. So with that, we just grab another image. There we are, that's considerably better. So I've got a much deeper depth of field. So if I just zoom in now, if I go to where we were, this is what we had, and this is what we've got now. So that's a much better focus point, I think. Okay. But overall, the image is a little bland, and the exposure's possibly not quite right. The highlights are good though. So what I need to do is just adjust the position of this light to give me the result that I want. Now I want a nice graduation on this white surface so that it graduates more to grey than white at the back. And I also want to maintain the nice highlights that I've got on the top of the peppers. So what I'm going to do is first of all lower this down to about here somewhere, and basically by lowering it down I can make use of the inverse square law. So let's just tip that down a bit as well. So I'm going to get this relatively close to the peppers. I want to be over the top of them, so I want to be about there somewhere, I think, like that. Now hopefully that's not in the picture. I can just check that quickly in the viewfinder. Yep, that looks okay. But obviously I've made this quite a lot closer than it was before. So I'm going to need to take some of the energy off. So I added 3 stops before, I think. I think I need to take off at least, what, 1.5 of those? Let's try that. There we are. So with 1.5 less stops of energy, let's just grab that again. Oh, it wasn't a bad guess for the exposure. That's pretty good. So this is what we had before, and this is what we've got now. So I've started to get the grey in the background like I wanted, but it's not quite there yet. And the other thing that's happened is that the highlights on the top of the pepper here have become far bigger. So let's just address that first. The first thing is, to make those highlights smaller, I need to move this slightly closer to the actual head itself. What that will do is concentrate the light more in one part of this. So let me just do that. There we go. This is one of the many advantages of using a shoot-through umbrella. You can't really do that if you're using a softbox. You're stuck with the homogeneous surface area that you started with. But with an umbrella, you can always make the light source closer to it. That will cause a hot spot down here. So without changing anything else, I'll just grab another image and we'll see what the difference is. There we are. Now you should be able to see, if I go back to the original one, this is what we had before. So these are all quite large. This is what we've got now. They've got smaller again, which is more of the type of thing that I want. Okay, but we're still not quite there yet. I think now that I've moved this, I can actually get it a little closer still. So that will exaggerate the effect of the inverse square law. So let's just have a go at doing that. I'm just going to very carefully just take this down a little. I'm also going to move it closer to the camera, just about there. So I haven't made a huge change, just a little one. Let's just check we're not in the field of view, which we're not. I'll just grab that again. There, so that small change has made a huge difference to the image that we're recording. So this is what we had before, and this is what I've got now. So we're getting a nice graduation back to grey at the back here. I've maintained the size of the highlight, more or less, and I've still got a nice soft result, so I'm getting a nice soft shadow underneath. Okay, so I think that's more or less in the right place. As for the exposure, that looks okay too. It's possibly a little under, but that's always not a bad thing. It will saturate the colour. So just as a final little embellishment, what I'm going to do is just spray the subjects here just with a little water. Okay. There we are. We'll just see what difference that makes. Yes, I think that's worked rather well. So that has given the impression of condensation on the peppers. Okay, so as for actually capturing the image, that's it. So it does show that with the right technique, you can use a relatively budget-friendly shoot-through umbrella to create a classic still life picture. So what I'm going to do now is just go into Photoshop and do the bare minimum of post-production. Okay, so here we are in Photoshop. And the first thing I'm going to do is just make a duplicate of this file so I can edit the duplicate and leave the camera original alone. The way I prefer to do that is just to go onto the background layer here, right click the mouse, just ask for a duplicate layer, but ask for a new document. We'll just call this Peppers. There we are. So Photoshop has made me a new file, placed it at the top here so I can shut down the camera original. I've always got that to go back to. Okay, so having done that, next thing to do would be just to have a look around the image. So I'm just going to zoom in a little, and just holding down the space bar I can pan over the image and just have a little look at it. And I think that's pretty good. The focus point is in the right place. We've got a lot of nice detail here. You can actually see in here a small rendition of the actual shoot-through umbrella, which is quite impressive. Okay, let's just come back out a little. I can see that I've got the odd blemish, so that's the first thing I'm going to do. So I just want to sort this out up here, and the best way to do that would just be with a spot healing brush, and we'll just get rid of that blemish. There we are. I've got another one just on here, and a little bit here. There we are, so that's more or less done. I can see there's a couple of dents in the stalk here, but I'm going to leave those. Okay, so I'll just zoom out. So with that little cleanup completed, next thing to do would be to pick a crop. Now I have my cropping tool set for 16:9 because I'm going to be using this for video. But what you need to do is just pick a ratio which will work for you. So let's just move that slightly down in the frame a bit. And I also just want to tighten it up slightly about the center point. So holding down the Alt key, I'll just move the sides in, and that will just center it for me like that. There, that's good. Just click on OK. And there we have it. So just by using a shoot-through umbrella and a very small flash, you could use a speedlight. With the right techniques, it's possible to produce a classic still life image. And I think overall, that's worked rather well. Okay, well I hope you liked watching how I made that image, and if you like watching these sort of things, do click on the other images as they appear, and don't forget to subscribe. Oh, and hit the like button. Thank you very much for watching.